Life often feels like a marathon, a race filled with hurdles and challenges that seem insurmountable. Each day, we carry the weight of our worries, our fears, and our doubts. We struggle to find peace in the midst of chaos, wondering how we can keep going when the burden feels too heavy. But what if I told you there's a way to find relief, a way to experience true peace? What if I told you that you don't have to carry these burdens alone? Today we're going to explore the transformative power of surrendering all your burdens to God and trusting that He will take care of them. Imagine standing at the edge of a cliff, the weight of the world pressing down on your shoulders. The fears, the anxieties, the unspoken worries, they're all there making it hard to breathe. But then you hear a gentle whisper, "Let it go. Trust me." That voice is God's inviting you to release your burdens and find solace in His unwavering love. We've all faced moments when life seemed unbearably heavy. Perhaps it was the loss of a loved one, a financial crisis, or a broken relationship. In those dark times, it's easy to feel alone and overwhelmed. But God promises to be our refuge, our ever-present help in times of trouble. Surrendering to Him means acknowledging that we can't do it all on our own, and that's okay. When I was younger, I watched my mother battle cancer. The fear and uncertainty were palpable. Yet, amidst the pain, I saw her turn to God with unwavering faith. She surrendered her fears and worries to Him, and in return she found a peace that transcended understanding. Her strength was not her own. It was a testament to the power of surrender. The act of surrender is not a sign of weakness, but of strength. It takes courage to admit that we need help, that we cannot bear our burdens alone. When we lay our troubles at God's feet, we are not giving up. We are giving in to a higher power that loves us unconditionally and desires the best for us. Think about the story of David and Goliath. David, a young shepherd boy, faced a giant warrior with nothing but a sling and a few stones. He didn't rely on his own strength or ability. Instead, he surrendered his fear to God, trusting that the Lord would fight his battles. God did not disappoint. Surrendering our burdens to God is like handing over a heavy backpack after a long, exhausting journey. The relief is immediate, the freedom palpable. We are no longer weighed down by the cares of this world. Instead, we are lifted by the hands of a loving Father who knows exactly what we need. In my own life, there have been countless times when I've tried to shoulder my burdens alone. It never worked. I only found true peace when I finally let go and trusted God to take care of it. The moment I surrendered, I felt an overwhelming sense of relief, as if a weight had been lifted from my soul. One of the most beautiful promises in the Bible comes from Matthew 11:28-30, where Jesus says, "Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls, for my yoke is easy and my burden is light." This invitation is open to all of us, no matter our circumstances. It's important to remember that surrender is not a one-time event, but a daily practice. Each morning we have the opportunity to lay our burdens at God's feet, trusting Him to guide us through whatever challenges we face. It's a continuous journey of faith, a constant reminder that we are never alone. Consider the lilies of the field, how they grow. They do not labor or spin, yet God takes care of them. If He cares so deeply for the flowers, how much more does He care for us? Surrendering our burdens to God means trusting in His provision and believing that He will take care of every detail of our lives. During a particularly tough season, a friend once told me, "God's got this." Those 3 simple words became my mantra. Whenever I felt overwhelmed, I would remind myself that God was in control. It didn't mean the challenges disappeared, but it meant I wasn't facing them alone. I could rest in the assurance that God was working all things together for my good. There is a profound peace that comes from knowing that we are not the authors of our own stories. God, in His infinite wisdom, is writing a beautiful narrative for each of us. When we surrender our burdens to Him, We are allowing his pen to write the chapters, trusting that his plans are far greater than our own. The process of surrendering our burdens can be likened to a river flowing downstream. The water doesn't struggle or strive. It simply flows, trusting in the path carved out for it. We too can flow in the grace of God's plan, knowing that he is guiding our steps and leading us to a place of peace. In times of uncertainty, it's easy to grasp for control, to try to fix everything ourselves. But control is an illusion. The more we try to hold on, the more anxious and stressed we become. Surrendering to God is an act of releasing that control, trusting that he is sovereign and that his ways are higher than ours. Reflect on the story of Job, a man who faced unimaginable loss and suffering. Despite his circumstances, Job maintained his faith in God. He surrendered his pain and questions to the Lord, and in the end, God restored him. Job's story is a powerful reminder that God is with us in our darkest moments, and he has the power to bring restoration. When we surrender our burdens to God, we are not ignoring our problems. We are entrusting them to the one who can truly handle them. God is not distant or indifferent to our struggle. He is intimately involved in every aspect of our life, and he cares deeply about what we are going through. It's okay to admit that we are not okay. God welcomes our honesty and our brokenness. When we come to him with open hearts, ready to surrender our burdens, he meets us with compassion and understanding. He wraps us in his love and reassures us that we are not alone. One of the greatest gifts of surrender is the freedom to live fully in the present moment. When we are not weighed down by the worries of tomorrow or the regrets of yesterday, we can embrace the beauty and joy of today. Surrendering to God allows us to experience life more fully and deeply. A dear friend once shared with me how she navigated a season of profound grief. She told me that every night she would kneel by her bed and pray, God, I give this pain to you. In her vulnerability, she found strength. In her surrender, she found healing. Her story is a testament to the power of trusting God with our deepest hurts. God's timing is perfect, even when it doesn't align with our own. Surrendering our burdens means trusting that his plans are unfolding exactly as they should. We may not always understand why things happen the way they do, but we can rest in the knowledge that God sees the bigger picture. Consider the story of Hannah in the Bible. She longed for a child and prayed fervently for years. In her anguish, she surrendered her desire to God, promising to dedicate her child to him. God heard her prayers and blessed her with a son, Samuel. Hannah's story reminds us that God hears our cries and responds in his perfect timing. Surrendering our burdens does not mean we will never face difficulties again. Life will always have its challenges, but it means that we have a constant source of strength and support in God. We are never left to navigate the storms alone. We have a steadfast anchor in him. During a particularly challenging project at work, I found myself overwhelmed and anxious. No matter how hard I tried, I couldn't find a solution. In a moment of desperation, I prayed, God, I surrender this to you. Almost immediately, a sense of peace washed over me. The situation didn't magically resolve itself, but I found the clarity and strength to persevere. God often uses our burdens to draw us closer to him. When we surrender our struggles, we open ourselves up to a deeper relationship with our Creator. Our trials become opportunities for growth, for strengthening our faith, and for experiencing God's love in profound ways. In moments of surrender, we are reminded of God's faithfulness. We look back on past experiences and see how he has carried us through. These memories become a source of encouragement, a testament to God's unwavering presence in our lives. Imagine standing on a mountaintop, the world spread out below you. The worries that once seemed so overwhelming now appear insignificant. This is the perspective God offers us when we surrender our burdens to him. He lifts us above our circumstances, giving us a glimpse of his greater plan. It's easy to fall into the trap of self-reliance, believing that we must solve all our problems on our own. But God invites us to lean on Him, to draw strength from His infinite resources. When we surrender, we acknowledge that our own efforts are limited, but God's power is limitless. One of the most comforting aspects of surrender is the assurance that God is always working for our good. Romans 8:28 reminds us, "And we know that in all things God works for the good of those who love Him, who have been called according to His purpose." When we surrender our burdens, we trust that God is orchestrating every detail for our benefit. During a health scare, a friend of mine found herself consumed with fear and worry. She couldn't sleep, couldn't eat, and felt completely overwhelmed. In her desperation, she cried out to God, surrendering her fears to Him. Gradually, she felt a peace that surpassed understanding, and her faith grew stronger as she trusted God with her health. The act of surrender is a powerful testimony to those around us. When others see us placing our trust in God, even in the face of adversity, they are encouraged to do the same. Our surrender becomes a beacon of hope, a living example of God's faithfulness and love. Think about the story of the Israelites crossing the Red Sea. They were trapped with the sea before them and the Egyptian army behind them. In their desperation, they cried out to God, and He parted the waters, making a way where there seemed to be no way, where there seemed to be no way. When we surrender our burdens, we make way for God's miraculous intervention in our lives. God's love for us is unwavering and unconditional. He desires to carry our burdens not because He has to, but because He loves us deeply. When we surrender to Him, we are responding to that love, trusting that He will care for us as only a loving Father can. In the midst of a financial crisis, I found myself overwhelmed with worry about how I would make ends meet. I tried everything I could think of, but nothing seemed to work. Finally, in a moment of surrender, I prayed, "God, I give this to You." Within days, unexpected provisions came my way, reminding me that God is our provider. Surrendering our burdens to God is an act of worship. It is an acknowledgement of His sovereignty and His goodness. When we trust Him with our struggles, we are honoring Him as the Lord of our lives, expressing our faith in His divine plan. One of the most beautiful aspects of surrender is the peace that comes with it. Philippians 4:6-7 encourages us, "Do not be anxious about anything, but in every situation, by prayer and petition with thanksgiving, present your requests to God, and the peace of God, which transcends all understanding, will guard your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus." This peace is a gift from God, a result of our surrender. During a difficult season in my marriage, I felt like giving up. The arguments, the misunderstandings, it all felt too much to bear. In a moment of surrender, I prayed, "God, I give this marriage to You." Slowly but surely, God began to heal our relationship, bringing us closer together and strengthening our bond. Surrendering our burdens doesn't mean we won't face challenges, but it means we won't face them alone. God promises to be with us every step of the way, providing the strength, wisdom, and guidance we need. When we surrender to Him, we are never abandoned. We are held in His loving arms. Consider the story of Joseph, who was sold into slavery by his own brothers and faced numerous trials. Despite his circumstances, Joseph remained faithful to God, surrendering his situation to the Lord. In the end, God elevated Joseph to a position of great influence, using his trials to accomplish a greater purpose. God's ways are higher than our ways, and His thoughts are higher than our thoughts. When we surrender our burdens to Him, we are acknowledging that His wisdom far surpasses our own. We may not always understand why things happen, but we can trust that God is working all things together for our good. During a season of joblessness, a friend of mine struggled with feelings of inadequacy and fear about the future. After months of striving on his own, he finally surrendered his situation to God. Shortly thereafter, he received an unexpected job offer that was better than anything he could have imagined. His story is a testament to the power of surrender. The journey of surrender is a process, not a destination. It requires daily commitment and faith. Each day, we must choose to lay our burdens at God's feet, trusting Him to carry them for us. It's a continual act of faith, a daily reminder of God's unfailing love and care. Surrendering our burdens allows us to experience God's grace in profound ways. His grace is sufficient for us, and His power is made perfect in our weakness. When we surrender, we open ourselves up to receive this grace, allowing it to transform our lives. Reflect on the story of Peter walking on water. As long as he kept his eyes on Jesus, he was able to do the impossible. But when he focused on the storm around him, he began to sink. Surrendering our burdens means keeping our eyes on Jesus, trusting Him to guide us through the storms of life. In moments of surrender, we experience a deep sense of freedom. We are no longer held captive by our fears and anxieties. Instead, we are liberated by the knowledge that God is in control. This freedom allows us to live with greater joy and purpose, knowing that our burdens are in the hands of a loving God. During a particularly stressful period at work, I found myself constantly worried about meeting deadlines and expectations. It felt like an impossible burden. In a moment of surrender, I prayed, "God, I give this work to you." Almost immediately, I felt a sense of peace and clarity, and I was able to approach my tasks with renewed energy and focus. God invites us to cast our cares on Him because He cares for us. 1 Peter 5:7 reminds us, "Cast all your anxiety on Him because He cares for you." This invitation is a reminder of God's deep love for us and His desire to carry our burdens. When we surrender, we are responding to that invitation, trusting in His care. The act of surrender is a powerful declaration of our faith. It is an acknowledgement that we believe in God's goodness and His ability to handle our struggles. When we surrender our burdens, we are proclaiming our trust in His divine plan and His unwavering love. Consider the story of Paul and Silas, who were imprisoned for their faith. Despite their circumstances, they sang hymns and prayed, surrendering their situation to God. In response, God miraculously freed them from their chains. Their story is a powerful reminder that God is with us in our darkest moments, ready to deliver us when we surrender to Him. Surrendering our burdens allows us to experience the fullness of God's love. His love is perfect and unconditional, and it casts out all fear. When we surrender, we are opening ourselves up to receive this love, allowing it to heal and transform us. During a time of personal loss, I found myself overwhelmed with grief and sadness. It felt like a burden too heavy to bear. In a moment of surrender, I prayed, "God, I give this pain to you." Gradually, I felt a sense of peace and comfort, knowing that God was with me in my sorrow, carrying my burden. God's promises are true and trustworthy. When we surrender our burdens to Him, we can hold on to His promises, knowing that He is faithful. Jeremiah 29:11 reminds us, "For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord. Plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you hope and a future." These promises give us hope and assurance as we surrender to Him. Surrendering our burdens to God allows us to experience His peace, which surpasses all understanding. This peace is not dependent on our circumstances, but on our trust in God. When we surrender, we are inviting this peace into our hearts and minds, allowing it to guard us against anxiety and fear. During a challenging season of parenting, I found myself overwhelmed with worry about my children's future. It felt like a burden too heavy to bear. In a moment of surrender, I prayed, "God, I give my children to you." Almost immediately, I felt a sense of peace and reassurance, knowing that God was watching over them and guiding their paths. God's love for us is unchanging and unwavering. When we surrender our burdens to Him, we are placing our trust in His love. This love is a constant source of strength and comfort, reminding us that we are never alone in our struggle. Surrendering our burdens allows us to experience the power of prayer. Prayer is a powerful tool for connecting with God and laying our burdens at His feet. When we pray, we are inviting God into our situations, trusting Him to take control and provide for our needs. As we journey through life, the burdens we carry can often seem overwhelming. Yet, in surrendering these burdens to God, we find a source of unparalleled strength and peace. When we lay our worries at His feet, we are not giving up but rather stepping into a profound trust in His love and sovereignty. Remember, surrender is not a one-time act but a daily practice of faith and reliance on God's unchanging goodness. Through real-life experiences and the timeless promises of Scripture, we see the transformative power of letting go and letting God take control. So, as you face your own challenges and trials, take a moment to pause and surrender. Allow God's love to envelop you, His peace to guard you, and His wisdom to guide you. Know that you are not alone. The Creator of the universe cares deeply for you and desires to carry your burden. Trust in His timing, lean on His strength, and rest in His unfailing love. In surrendering to God, you will find a freedom and joy that surpasses all understanding, knowing that He will take care of it all.